So I don't want anybody to get the false impression that I am defending Charles Manson, because I'm not. He manipulated people. He had that cult, and he manipulated them to do those Sharon Tate murders. And there was, about 7 people that had died. Now, my only point is just about the specifics to the case. And so, actually, you have Megan here who says monsters create monsters. And I appreciate Megan for saying that, because what I know about Charles Manson is that he told them and manipulated them. So what the fuck is up with the followers? The followers actually did the killing. And I do see a correlation with the military-industrial complex and Charles Manson, because literally the emperor does not murder anybody. They physically don't actually do it. They order others to do it. So they manipulate people. They brainwash them, right? They don't do it themselves, so they would have a free speech. I just told them to do it. I didn't do it myself. I just ordered them. And then the Nuremberg defense is that that's not a good enough defense, just following orders. So therefore, the crimes would fall upon the people that did them. Now, a lot of people say it should be the leadership. The leadership has gotten away with it, so there's a point. Charles Manson is a poor man, so he's going to get convicted for influencing others to murder in his name, right? For brainwashing them and telling them to go do it and manipulating them and whatever, doing whatever it is that he did in order to get them to do these heinous crimes, these heinous war crimes, over 1 million dead, all these Vietnams in Africa and, in Yemen, there's 7 million people about ready to fucking starve to death, and Sudan and all over the fucking place. Just open your eyes. So I just want to mention all this just because it's fresh on my mind. So here's what I say when it comes to Charles Manson. So fuck him for influencing people to do all the Sharon Tate murders. There was a 15-year-old here that had murdered a 22-year-old. And so while I think that we do need to love the criminals, because that's the only way we're going to reform anybody, if we think that there's room for reform. So if we think that there's no room for reform, why are we taking care of this person their entire lives? There's no room for reform. So they're always going to be a monster. They're always going to be a beast. So why keep that beast alive? So it seems, weird. I do believe in an eye for an eye. So Sharon Tate didn't deserve to die. And so we need to take care of the victims first. We need to take care of that 22-year-old first. I'm assuming that he's an innocent victim. They got in, they're part of the same gang. But it seems like there was an argument. And then he shot the other guy. So he's 15 years old, and you're like, oh my God, when you look at him, he looks like a baby. He looks like a baby, and he also smiles like he's loved and he's being taken care of. So what would possess a 15-year-old to, do some shit like this? Maybe disrespect, right? That's what Duterte, he bragged about when he was 16 years old, he killed a person. And so he killed somebody when he was 16 years old, and now he's the president of the Philippines. So are we saying that these murderer and psycho criminal sons of bitches one day could be our leaders? That's a scary fucking proposition. We need to take care of that 22-year-old. We need to take care of the victims of Charles Manson, Sharon Tate. So I'm going to read into Sharon Tate and all the murders that they did. So to really, immerse myself into this case and to give myself, just to I'm not defending Charles Manson. I do defend his humanness, but I'm not defending his behavior or his criminal activities. I do not advocate anybody going around and telling them to manipulate others into murdering people, But there was an interview when he goes, why are you treating me like a murderer? I didn't murder anybody. And so the facts of the case is that Charles Manson didn't kill anybody. Charles Manson also went into the Kentucky judicial system as a juvenile when he was 15 years old. He was born to a single Kentucky woman, a prostitute, probably getting his ass kicked, right? Spare the rod, spoil the child, prostitute, single mother on her own, having to sleep with all these different men, and then he's probably a burden, right? She wants to love and take care of him, but she's having to live this hard life, probably a Christian, spare the rod, spoil the child. So he's getting his ass kicked. He's being neglected his entire life. He had his Confederate uncle Jesse, who blew up with the moonshine still, telling him, like, we're not going to be reformed boys. We're not going to go into the school system. And so he was saying, as a Confederate, we're still rebels and we'll always be Confederates. He had that fucking Nazi, on his forehead. So these are just facts to the case, okay? So this is the facts to Charles Manson's life. He's 83 years old, so he was put in jail when he was 15 years old over a $20 check. So, and then, could you say that him being raped by the authorities caused him to become a monster? I think so. I think monsters create monsters. And so, I do see how a person could go into a juvenile center and get raped by all these men, and then you look around and nobody gave a shit. Nobody stopped it. Nobody said it was bullshit. People made jokes. Everybody ignored it. Everybody turned their back. And so, he could have said, well, if society's going to turn, their back on him, he's going to turn his back on society. And so I do think that it has some effect. Is it possible to get raped and to not, go around murdering people? Yeah, I think so. That I've had, not raped, but I had a sexual assault, and essentially she just rubbed on my leg. And I can forget about that. I could kind of say, you know what, it was weird, it was uncomfortable, it was bullshit. And it was, I did report it, and I feel more disgusted about me reporting it than I did about the, I could go on with it, but because I told people, now I'm like fucking embarrassed about this shit, because the guy who I reported it to, the main guy at Spalding, or some guy who pretends like he's the main guy, he essentially was like, are you telling the truth? And then he goes, why didn't you just tell her to stop? Right? Well, being in Spalding University, they treat you like kindergartners. They treat you very like an infantile. They're all fucking comfortable with this shit. They're Nazis. They follow the dictator. They're blindly obedient. And I'm sitting there like, this is weird. This is uncomfortable to me. And so that's the point. They're trying to train you into sitting down, shutting up. They're the commander. They're the fucking chief. You got to obey every goddamn thing that they say. And that's all they want. They're not trying to make you a better social studies teacher, English teacher. They're not actually honing your craft, getting you to be better business people, or actually, somebody that created or did something with their life, because those who can't teach, if you can't, well, then they're going to go teach, right? So, I would be an awesome teacher because I would pique people's curiosity. But where am I going? I just see the entire 1950s, prostitute, single mother, being neglected, getting beat up, probably being rambunctious boy or whatever, but he's got Confederate fucking influences. He's being, beat up at the home, beat up at school, and getting raped, and getting fucking raped in prison. And it's repetitive. It's over and over again. So that is traumatic. That is institutional. And is it possible that you could blame all society for that bullshit? I think so. I think so. Absolutely. And this seems to be a decent post. And it's just, in order, people want to say, why are you defending Charles Manson? And I can understand that somewhat, because I'm not defending Charles Manson, okay? So, again, I'm going to repeat that over and over. What he did was a fucking crime, and fuck Charles Manson. He ended the 60s. So, the 60s, the hippies, peace, love, freedom, everybody's naked, smoking weed, it looks like we're going to win, and then we fucking lose, and we're still in war. We're in war all over the fucking place. So, war didn't stop, right? The Vietnam War briefly ended. But this one lady basically reached out, and she kind of just said what her experiences were. And she said that she had trauma and she didn't want to hurt a bunch of people. And so I was like, well, what do you do? And she's essentially saying that she's sad, she's depressed, she has to combat PTSD. She says that her body is hypervigilant. She startles easily. She's got a lot of problems. And she gets suicidal, and she isolates herself so that people can't hurt her, but then it's a double-edged sword because you don't have that human connection. And so, in a way, it almost sounds like she didn't solve it, She realizes the effects and the experiences of it, but, I do think that you should look at each person's individual experiences, but when you look at Norway tries to reform the people with the Plus University. So, if we're not reforming people, I do think our criminal justice system is set up to reform. I once heard that the average jail sentence is 7 years for a murder and 21 years for crack. So, 7 fucking years for murder? Murder's the worst thing you can do. So, crack, 21 years is ridiculously insane, and 7 years is kind of ridiculously too small. But if that's the average, I don't know where I got that number from, but 7 years for murder, right? If you did it yourself, he didn't do it. He influenced others, so he really didn't, an accessory to the crime, right? Someone's an accessory. Yeah, of course. So he's a part of it. He's somehow a part of this thing. He influenced him. But ultimately, I guess if the person didn't do the crime, I don't know. I mean, aren't the people basically responsible for their own behavior? So Charles Manson told them to do it, but they could have just said no. How come they felt like they were just following orders? They just had to do it. So those people who committed the crime should definitely fucking be convicted. They should definitely be thrown in jail and possibly, eye for an eye. So possibly get the capital punishment. Get that there, capital punishment thing there. But that, now he influenced them. So if we're going to just say who influences people, I mean, he directly influenced them. But who influences anybody, right? All of society, environment, the media, lots of people influence others. And so if somebody got brainwashed by something else. So I think in our society, maybe because he lorded over them in their own little, family, little Manson family cult. But when O'Reilly got, the so-called baby killer killed, when you had Sarah Palin get that one congresswoman shot up, when, basically I feel like these pundits feel like that's a success. It's a success. I got some crazy person, right? Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Bill O'Reilly was happy that somebody, acted upon. Bill O'Reilly doesn't get in trouble because he's just a mouthpiece. He's just speaking. But that woman gets in trouble because she assaulted another person. So does Bill O'Reilly, is he culpable? Is he responsible for the behavior that he essentially inspired? I don't know. I guess I believe in free speech to a point where I say no. And so then therefore the only people that would be in trouble would be the ones that actually did the crime. Now, it's free speech. I mean, people are being manipulated. What was the extent of their manipulation? I'd want to look into all of that. And so everything about him, wanting to start a race war, killing people is sick and fucked up. In spite of that, I think that people could do heinous crimes and they could be reformed. And they could be, you got to reach out to their humanity. And then that's the only way people can change. And if we're not trying to change people, I don't know why we're taking care of them for life. So he, ended the fucking 60s. Fuck Manson for that. Sharon Tate, all those people who had died, he is responsible because he, told them to do it. So he is responsible for the crime. Now, the criminal, how much time? These are the questions we need to ask now. How much time does he get for it? He didn't directly murder them. He had influenced them. He had told them to go do it. Okay, so he's responsible. How much time? For the rest of his life? Forever and ever? And then I remember when he was in jail, people were interviewing him, Geraldo specifically, and basically just trying to get a reaction out of the guy. So he would just kind of like, shake him up and just being like, come on, Charlie, the devil's in you. Why don't you tell me about that devil that's in you? And so then Charlie kind of said, what do you think is going to happen when I get out of here? And so he says a bunch of stupid shit. But when you corner any, thing, the nicest, creature in the world, right? What's the sweetest, nicest? A cow, a nice docile cow. If a cow is cornered, it's going to start bucking and kicking. So, to expect someone to not... So, what am I saying here? I'm saying that we take care of the victims first. And if the victims, if they all said that, to putting Charlie to death would make them feel satisfied, I would listen to that. I would consider that. But if they said not to reform him, he was in jail and prison his entire fucking life. Being raped as a child, in and out of jail, and then he's in there forever. So basically he grew up in our prison system. 80 to 90% of Charlie Manson's life was in the prison system. So he had socialism, right? We took care of his ass. We fed him, we clothed him, we gave him shelter, we gave him every goddamn thing. So what would be the incentive if you're homeless not to commit a crime? But that's just a failure on us. I think it's a failure on us. We took care of him for 80 years. If we were trying to reform people, which I think we are, he should have been able to get out. And again, like I said, it depends upon the victims and how they feel about the thing, and the families of the victims and the loved ones of the victims. But just ultimately, as the government, we set the example. I do believe in the death penalty under very limited circumstances, but I go back and forth because I also feel like if we're, the state kills people, then we're saying that it's okay, and therefore it's, we should never do it in any circumstances just because murder is murder, and that's a good threshold. It's a very liberal, high liberal threshold that I respect, but I disagree. I disagree with, ultimately. So, yeah, I'm not defending Charlie Manson. He's 83, he's dead now, so the few things that I know about him, he was getting raped as a child when he was 15 years old. He could have not turned that, rage and animosity and how society turned their back on him. He could have turned that around. He could have just said, well, it happened and I can't do nothing about it, but I can change my circumstances so it doesn't happen again. Or he could enact revenge upon them specifically or on society in general. So there's many ways that a person could react to it. She was basically saying that, you just got to sort of fix this yourself. You just got to sort of, do what you can. And that's ultimately right. But I feel like when you've been a victim of something so heinous, imagine if you were, Charles Manson getting raped and you run out and a Kentucky farmer seeing this commotion. He probably just says, I don't want to get involved with it, but he chose the oppressor. He chose the leadership. So Kentucky authorities were raping the shit out of Charles Manson, made Charles Manson, and so the so-called good people like the Ku Klux Klan, they didn't stop the bad people. The bad people are running shit. The leadership is running shit. And so, is it fair to blame all society? I don't know. Maybe, yeah, somewhat. But then no, at the same, point. So, could you have stand up to the Klan? Yeah, and then got shot, and then what good would that have done? But could you have organized? Could you have done something else? The good people didn't stand up to the Klan, and then that's the reason why the Klan got away with all their horse shit. So, what do we do here? What do we do? Charles Manson is a piece of shit, and he's 83 and he's dead, so who gives a shit? But I think it's important to understand that the 60s were going swimmingly, then all of a sudden Manson and his helter-skelter and his fucking Nazi, and they're all laughing and they think it's hilarious that they just, did this heinous crime, killed all these innocent people, trying to start a race war, some crazy dumbass fucking scheme. And then he started taking the publicity and all the headlines, and then that's all anybody was talking about. And so the 60s was, peace, love, freedom, and then motherfucking Manson. Now he's splattered all across, the nation. And so what do we do with a fucking Manson, right? A fucking piece of shit that just wants to hurt other people, just wants to hurt other people just to hurt other people because of a sadistic, masochistic thrill out of it. So monsters create monsters. I think that's fucking brilliant. Monsters create monsters. Charles Manson is a piece of shit, but he was created by Kentucky rapist jailers, and I had an incident that happened to me in a Kentucky jail. I reported it, and I almost got disappeared. Almost got beat up again. How dare you report on them? They got a thin blue line. We defend our rapist jailers no matter fucking what. And the crime I was accused of, I didn't do anything. I was walking across the street, that police brutality trial with Louisville. So I was just walking to the store. I get beat up by some cops who just, were driving stupidly, come across me. And I said, they're undercover. Anyways, so, and then I go to jail, and I had it wasn't, it was penetration, but it was with their finger. And so that's, it was intentional, and then I got hog-tied and beat up afterwards. So it was you're not shit. You're going to take, and then I'm in jail, so I'm like, should I fight and defend myself? Now I'm going to have a fucking assault charge. It'll be my word versus them. The system is against the American people. The system is against the American people. So that was what the one lady who had said she had some trauma that had happened to her. Essentially she said that my frustration is with the system, and it absolutely is. My frustration is with the system. Because fuck the system. The system is bullshit. The system created Charles Manson, and then when Charles Manson did the same shit the system did to him, fucked him up, right? Made him a monster. And then he got fucked over. So the system created itself. Monsters created more monsters, right? The jailer rapist monsters created more evil rapist monsters. And then they're able to arrest him, and they put him right back in fucking jail. So it was just a vicious it's a perpetuating cycle. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. And he originally went to jail over a $20 check, a forgery, over a $20 check. And I guess that's another thing. I guess I feel a little kinship with Charles Manson is that he was from Kentucky. And that's not well known. He lived in West Virginia and he was born in Cincinnati. but he lived in the hills of Appalachia in eastern Kentucky. And he did have an Uncle Jesse, so he had a Confederate influence. The Nazi on his fucking forehead, the Confederates are anti-school, school's fascist anyways. So who are you going to listen to? The piece of shit fucking teachers that don't give a shit about your life, or your shitty Confederate fucking uncle? And why are you at your uncle's house? Because your dad's, Captain Maddox or some military man that didn't want to admit that he had sex with a prostitute, so he couldn't admit what he had done. So Charles Manson was kind of fucked to begin with, and he was getting raped as a child, and then he, turned into a fucking monster. Could he have found the love and support that he needed? Yeah, Manson could have. He could have got raped by the Kentucky jailers and then went out to California and just, with hippies and just been like, peace, love, freedom. But instead of going along with the fucking, the nice hippie flow, he took advantage of a lot of vulnerable people. And fuck him for doing that. So a monster, the Kentucky jailer monsters created a fucking monster that is Charles Manson. And he's dead now, but he stayed in our fucking jail the entire time. When I look at Charles Manson, I look at a little puny little piece of shit, right? I could just fucking knock the shit out of fucking Charles Manson. We couldn't reform this fucking piece of shit. We couldn't have put him in some kind of halfway house. Just to give him a little bit of freedom. Let's just see how he would have done. And if he fails these few little freedom tests, then fuck him. If he's not willing to reform, if he's not willing to change. But I bet you if it was a Norway system, if it was a plush university and we were trying to reform him, we could have. And if we couldn't, then we couldn't, But to not even fucking try, so we're throwing people away. But Charles Manson, because he was born an orphan, because he was born in Kentucky, because he had a $20 check, and he got raped by Kentucky jailers, his life was thrown away before he even got a chance to begin. And so he is human, so take care of the victims first. And then if we got time and we got resources, let's take care of the criminals, because they need love too, and that's the only way you're going to solve or fix anybody is with just plenty of love. And you got to reconnect Ubuntu. You got to find that good person that's in that person, in all people, and pull it out of them. Remember, you are a good person. You're a good person. You're a good person. Don't forget that. When did you forget that? You have the capacity to hurt people, but you also have the capacity to, help people. So act upon which wolf wins, the wolf that you feed. And so, Charles Manson didn't get much of a chance to feed that good wolf. And so, what could we have gained from that? Maybe nothing. If he would have got out and did some crime, then that would have been my fucking fault, right? We trusted him and we thought he would reform, and he did tell us that he was going to, hurt a lot more people if he got out. But if we're just throwing people away, why would we take care of him for fucking 60 years? He just, as an old man, just stayed in jail just because we couldn't make a decision. We couldn't figure out what we wanted to do with Charles. Do we reform him? Do we put him to death? Who gives a shit? He's already in jail. Let's just let him sit there. That's the solution. We've already decided he's just going to sit in jail. Sit and rot in jail for life. We'll pay for your food. There's homeless people that don't have food. There's homeless people that don't have shelter. So we're showing more love and compassion for Charles. So I don't want people to get that notion that I'm caring more about Charles Manson than all of you all, because all of you all are so much better because you didn't influence anybody else to kill other people. So that makes you, leaps and bounds above Charles Manson. So just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. He did not specifically kill anybody. He got raped by Kentucky jailers, and he fucking ended the 60s. So that's some historical, piece that you might not have known about. Him, Sharon Tate, he got a lot of his followers to kill Sharon Tate and several other folks. I think that was in Sharon Tate's house. She was an actress, and so that's just the facts, right? So he got a lot of his followers, including, it looked like hippies, right? I think there were some, beautiful women that would do this, that would kill a lot of people because Charlie told them to, and then they did it. And Charlie's thing was to start a race war, so he wanted to kill Sharon Tate and make it look so bad that a black person did it, and then people would be so outraged that black people would commit such a heinous fucking act that they would go fucking ape shit. But it wasn't a black person that created a heinous act. It's, the same people that enslaved blacks and genocided Native Americans. Right? The Mystic River Massacre. Thanksgiving is all about a big celebration of murder and genocide. So to think that a nation that celebrates murder and genocide could create a Charles Manson who encourages others to murder and genocide and start. So I think he might have actually done the opposite though with the race war. It's a white man that fucking did this and white people that did it. So it wasn't the black folks, right? He was trying to make black folks look like, look, God, they're such savages. They're such animals. They, we got to do something about. But it wasn't the black folks that were the savages or the animals. It was the white people. Charles Manson was a savage and he was the animal. And how did he get created? By Kentucky jailers, by Kentucky culture, by a Confederate uncle, by a prostitute mother, but probably tried to do her best. But if she's Christian and beating the shit out of them, she's adding to the violence, she's adding to the pain and the oppression. And that fucking Colonel Maddox, she was a single mother. What happened to the father? Where the fuck was the father? And if the father was around, why couldn't the father have taken care of Charles Manson? So I think a lot should be put upon, all these factors. All these factors. Charles Manson chose to raise that family and get them to go kill all those fucking people. Fuck him for that. Fuck him for that. No doubt about that in my mind whatsoever. The time period before that, and then the time period when he's rotting in jail for, 60 years, just seems weird to me. So, yeah, I'll read my statement and I'll just end that off. So, Charles Manson first went to juvenile jail in Kentucky over a forged check for $20. For $20 check. Charles Manson was getting raped the shit out of a boy, and I think that I do have a problem. I don't think people respect boys or male bodies. They respect female bodies. They respect if a woman gets sexually assaulted, but when a man does, like, who the fuck are you going to say, if you're a woman or a man, I don't know what I would do. But I do feel like if your jail, if your leadership is raping people and you're part of that population, that group of that municipality, you're kind of complicit because you're not stopping your leaders. The jailers are the leaders of your society. And if they're raping people and you're not stopping them, then you're part of that society that allows them to do it. Maybe you're powerless. Maybe you can't do anything about it. Okay. But you can't sit there and say that the system is good, If you're saying that you're powerless to do anything about it, fine. Are you going to try to do anything about it? Are you going to mention it? Are you going to, just be like, well, I'm powerless, so you're not going to do shit. You're not going to do shit about it. Then I think that you're complicit. I think you're complicit in those crimes. I speak out about it, but I guess I don't march into jail and stop them from doing it. I would, if I was a jailer, if I had that authority. So, jailers rape teenager Manson repeatedly. He tries to run away, but he couldn't. He keeps on getting caught, right? So, like a fugitive slave, nope, you got to go back into your rapist plantation. You got to go back into your pen, into your barn where you're going to get raped, repeatedly, left and right. And so, the part that I feel for on this, could he have healed himself? Sure, but 1960s, 1970s, fucking Kentucky. Who the hell? There's not going to be any psychiatrist that's going to listen to him, and nobody gave a shit about him in the first place. And so the rapist jailers. I mean, that's the biggest thing I think actually for me, because people don't respect male bodies. So who gives a shit about baby Charles Manson? Fuck his body. He's going to be a stupid fucking man anyways, right? So as a boy, as a Christian, as a dominant, as authoritarian, shut your mouth, do as I say. Oh, you're not going to be obedient to me? Then you go to jail and you get raped. That'll teach you to what? Think for yourself. To not be abused by some piece of shit Christian mother that really doesn't love you. And yeah. So a Charles Manson could have been prevented. So that's important. If we want to learn from our mistakes, we could have prevented Charles Manson. That would have saved Sharon Tate's, the people, those jailers that raped Charles Manson, the blood of Sharon Tate and all their followers are on the rapist, Kentucky jailer rapist hands too. I think they're responsible for creating the monster that is Charles Manson. And Charles didn't deserve that. He wrote a fucking check for $20. He did not deserve to get fucking raped by a bunch of creepy, fucking disgusting older men who are pedophiles, right? Or 15-year-olds, so clearly like young boys. So it's statutory and it's rape. So it's rape, statutory rape. And for a $20 fucking check, Charles Manson we could have prevented Charles Manson. Could we have reformed him? I think it's a question we can discuss. And what's the other thing? He was from Kentucky and he had Confederate influence. So Manson was a Confederate Nazi.